Netiquette. Netiquette, as defined by Virginia Shea, is a set of rules for behaving properly online. If you'd like to read the full book, you can reach it at this website listed on this page. There are 10 rules associated with Netiquette. Rule number 1 is remembering the human, and essentially this is the golden rule, just to treat others as you would like to be treated online. And to remember that there are real people behind the computer screens and that those people have feelings. So sometimes it's very easy for us to type something that we wouldn't normally say in real life because we feel that we're hiding behind a computer screen, but the person on the other end who's going to be reading that can interpret it another number of different ways. So it's also important to remember that tone and inflection and intent and sarcasm, things like that, sometimes don't translate in an online environment. And also with this, it's important to remember that communications in cyberspace are permanent. They never go away, even after they've been deleted. There's always a record of everything somewhere. The second rule is that the same standards apply online and in real life. So anything that you would or would not do in your regular classroom should translate over to the online classroom. And just a couple of things to remember is the ethics and legality behind what you're doing, and also just following your moral compass. The third rule of Netiquette, is to know where you are. And if you look on the right, you'll see a picture. This is an artist's representation of what the internet might look like if you could see it. And the dots are the computers, servers, terminals across the world, and the lines in between them, the white lines and the multicolored lines, are all the different connections. So you can see how the internet at any one point is connected to every other point on the internet. However, that being said, not all areas of the internet are the same. We're dealing with online classrooms, so if you look at the second point, what is acceptable in some areas is not in others. So what you would expect to see on social networking sites is not necessarily acceptable in an online classroom, and you need to establish those standards early and make your students aware of them. The fourth rule is to respect other people's time and bandwidth. So your time is important and your students' time is important, and it's not unlimited. So we need to make sure that the assignments, the readings, the activities that we're putting online are appropriate for our students and also a good use of their time. The fifth rule is to make yourself look good online. So when you say something online, you should really know what you're talking about. Again, this is the same as it would be in your regular classroom. But however, the thing you need to remember is that your students online depend on you almost a lot more than they do in the classroom because they're not physically with you every day in class. So really know what you're talking about online, and if you post something, make sure it's correct because the students will go back and refer to that. The sixth rule is sharing your expert knowledge. So you should share your knowledge with your students, and vice versa. You should expect your students to share knowledge back with you, as well as your experiences and your students' experiences. Have time and a place for those to be shared in your online classroom, whether that be in a threaded discussion or whether there be just a general area where the students can exchange ideas. And when you have a question, make sure you share the answer with your students. If you have a question about something that came up in class, a student asks a question that you weren't able to answer, make sure that you share the answer with your students. And if you have questions about technology, anything like that you find, share that knowledge with your students because that will help them in the long run as well. And the fourth point here is that you should expect to receive thorough answers. So don't accept yes and no answers from online students. That's not enough. We should really be delving more into the why things happen and the how and the when and the where, as opposed to just yes and no. So when you're structuring your questions, make sure you're making them open-ended enough that they can foster good communication and good discussions like that. The seventh rule is to keep flaming under control. And flaming is defined as the hostile and insulting interaction between internet users. So to boil it down into terms that we would understand, flaming is essentially cyberbullying. And the one thing that we need to remember about this is many students gravitate to online because they were bullied in school. So this is kind of a safe haven for them. So we really don't want cyberbullying to enter the mix here. So if we see any sign of this, we need to nip it in the bud very quickly because if a student retreats to online because of bullying and because of fear of going to school, and then the school online is the students experiencing the same thing, then it really negates the purpose of why that student chose online, and we need to make sure that we're doing better than that for our students. The eighth rule is to respect the people's privacy. And everybody online has an expectation of privacy, especially your students. Although we know that a lot of things online are not private, one thing that we really do need to make sure of is that your privacy between you and your students is protected. So not sharing emails, private emails with students. Obviously, if the student wants us to share something with the class, we can do that. But communications between you and your student, just like in your regular classroom, should never be shared with other people in the classroom or anyone else for that matter. The ninth rule is to don't abuse your power. The same way you wouldn't abuse your power in the regular classroom, you would never abuse your power in an online classroom. And the biggest thing here is to never ever give your password to anyone, not your husband, your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, anyone. That password allows anyone who has it access to your course. That means they have access to student correspondence, student grades, student assignments, student communications. Okay, so we really need to make sure that that password is very well protected and you never give it to anyone. And the 10th and final rule is to be forgiving of others' mistakes. Mistakes will be made online, but it's important that we recognize those mistakes and take them in stride, both our students' mistakes and our own mistakes, and also own up to our mistakes online. If we mistype something, if we misrepresent something online, fix it and make sure the students know that you've fixed it. Also, be polite when you make a correction to somebody, because again, if you do a correction in a discussion board or something like that, everyone's going to see it. So along the lines with that, if it's something sensitive, make sure you do that correction privately, either through email or telephone or private chat, something like that. So really, be forgiving, but expect other people to be forgiving of your mistakes too. So if you have any questions on Netiquette, please respond to the threaded discussion below that you'll find in this section of the course, and I will answer those questions as I can. And as always, if you can answer somebody else's question in the threaded discussion, please do so.